These null-aware operators are used on variables that could have null values. So if a variable can be potentially null, then for accessing the properties and methods of a variable you need to add a question mark in front of the dot. With this, accessing a null variable always leads to null values, and variables with a value will execute the properties and methods and return the result. Next, for accessing nullable variables you can use the conditional. If the left variable or expression is not null, then it will be simply returned. However, if the left expression, the variable, is null, then it will evaluate and return the right expression. Next, to assign a value conditionally to a variable, use the double question mark. If the variable on the left side is null, then it will assign the value of the right side to this variable. However, if the variable on the left side is not null, then it will simply keep the value that it had before. And finally, if you have a nullable list, then you can use the null-aware spread operator by including after the 3 dots of the spread operator a question mark. With this, if the variable is not null, then the variable values will be simply added to the list. However, if the variable is null, then nothing will be included to this list. We learn about Flutter Null Safety. A variable requires a real value. Assigning a null value is not allowed by default. Simply add a question mark so that you can also assign a null value to your variable. Calling a method or property on a nullable type doesn't work. Therefore, you need to add a question mark or exclamation mark before the dot. For a variable that is null, the question mark will return a null value as a result, and the exclamation mark will throw an exception at runtime that crashes your app. On the other hand, if the variable has a real value, then the methods and properties are executed normally and return their result. Next, converting a nullable type to a not nullable type doesn't work by default, since a not nullable type doesn't support potential null values. Simply add to the right side of the variable an exclamation mark or a default value. If the variable is null, the exclamation mark will throw an exception and crashes the app. The other operation will assign the default value to the variable if the variable was null. Otherwise, if the variable has a real value, then both operations will assign this value to the variables. And finally, if you don't want to make your variable nullable because you initialized it already somewhere else, then simply add the late keyword before the variable type. The late keyword is a promise to Dart that the variable is later initialized with a real value. If you missed to initialize this variable, then you didn't fulfill this promise and it will lead to a runtime exception and crashes the app.